It's probably doing it on your own person. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're at in this big, beautiful world we call Earth. My name is Cody, and I am the host of Benefits 3.0, a Behind the Premium series that we do each and every week with the CEO of Trio. So introducing him, he is my co-host with the most. Jacob, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Cody.
Awesome. I think we've got a great topic set up for today. So let me just kind of set the preference for this and some context around there for everybody listening in. Every year benefits renewals come every single year, and every single renewal comes with just a handshake from the business owner to the broker themselves. The business owner goes on with their business thinking that their healthcare benefits are fit. They're optimized, they're ready to go for the upcoming year. But what if the most important role within this whole renewal strategy is actually about to be replaced? I'm not talking by another person. I'm not talking by a broker competitor. I'm actually talking about software or even a machine. So we already know that AI is doing most of the healthcare analysis. They're already modeling the costs every time you go to renew. And so the question of the day is, can AI replace, or should I say, should AI replace an insurance broker? So to put the disclaimer out there, both Jacob and I are pro agent, broker agents. But for today's context and somebody's probably going to cut this down the road to say, look, Cody was totally anti-broker, which is not the case by any means. I need to make that very, very clear. Both of us are very pro. We think that it is a vital role within the trifecta of being able to optimize, being able to provide the best experience when it comes to healthcare between the business owner, the broker, as well as having somebody help manage the employees. So want to make that very clear. So in today's debate, I guess you could say, I will be taking on the role of pro AI, and Jacob is going to be pro broker. Are you ready for this one? Are you ready to go, Jacob?
I'm ready.
All right, let's just dive right into it, I guess. So, we already know that AI has, not just in the healthcare industry, but like you've got Elon Musk, you've got Sam Altman, you've got all these guys that are running some of the very top AI models out there that are claiming that by 2030, a lot of AI or a lot of jobs will be replaced by AI, paralegal, some medical, some even just software. I mean, Elon's gone on record to say within a couple of years, don't worry about getting a programming degree because software AI will basically write it. So let's kind of kick it off there. I'm kind of curious your thoughts on that. Since you're a programmer, I'm just curious, do you think that AI will replace a full-time employee or a full-time coder?
First of all, to clear the record, I would say I'm a reformed programmer or a recovering programmer. It's been a little while. But yeah, I do love programming and building. 100%, I agree. I think AI is going to take over programming. I think writing code is the easy part for AI because it can follow patterns and documentation and best practices, and that's where like learning models really excel at looking at what patterns worked in the past and applying them to the thing you want to do. I think where we'll still need software engineers is actually architecting systems, because and I just read this quote, drawing a blank, it was recent though, I can't remember who said it, that you can't replace human creativity. And I think that's going to be sort of the linchpin of how AI gets involved in our lives. I think anything that requires human creativity is going to be not able to be replaced by AI.
So Okay, with that kind of being said then, so let's break it down for a broker, right? What is the role of a broker, really?
Yeah, I mean, they're, working to solve the healthcare problem, to deliver healthcare to businesses and, find the best plans and structure in a way that really makes sense for the population of the business they're serving. Similar to a real estate agent, they're filtering deals, they're the middleman, they know how the system works, and they use their knowledge of that system to bring the best opportunities to their clients.
Okay, so when you say problem, and I know you just said, bring the best opportunities or products to the company, but really, what is that main problem that brokers solve
You know,
that AI can't? Let's just
that AI can't. So I think it ties back into creativity. We work with some absolutely amazing brokers, and they get very, very creative with how they meet the needs of their organizations, of their groups, their clients. And I think that is going to be sort of the thing that's going to be difficult to replace because brokers know how the system works, and it's a very people-driven system. So um, all along the healthcare, health insurance value chain, there's humans making decisions, all the way from the employee deciding what care they should get or where they should get it, how to pay for it, those things, to HR, CFOs, finance people in a company deciding what plans and what benefits to offer, to the broker who's bringing those plans in. If you go deeper, you got TPAs, you got PBMs, reinsurance, stop loss. You've got all these players, and at every single step in this value chain, there's a human making a decision. And they use AI a lot today for examining claims, underwriting, um, a lot of demographic analysis, because that's easy. They can look at patterns and trends, but that data all comes back to a person who's deciding what risk they want to take and uh, how to put those pieces together in the best way possible to kind of move it back down the chain to serve that employee.
okay. So I'm gonna come at you a little bit hard here. You ready? So would you agree with me that when it comes to software, when it comes to AI, it's only as good as the people that program it, as well as the data that it has behind it to run it?
Yeah, I would argue it's as good as, it's probably better than the people that programmed it now, because it learns and they can program in the learning. And but yeah, it's only as good as the information it has.
I only say that because, I've worked for a couple of smart device product companies, and let's be honest, they're pretty dumb because they don't cross communicate with other products unless it's their product. Yeah, they might integrate with other products. I'm thinking of Google, for an example. Google might be good, but does it really work with Alexa? Does it, my Amazon products? Does it work with my Ring doorbell? Does it work with whatever, right? And a lot of these companies don't really share data back and forth. And so therefore it's kind of dumb because it only gets certain data that it lives off of, right? And so when I look at the broker side of things, you said that there's a lot of human touches within the process of renewing, right? In my conversations with a lot of different brokers, it seems like the process is that they're very limited on the knowledge of what's actually out there. Um, they email, they upload, they do copy and paste in a sense to get businesses to go to underwriting so that they can get a quote for their people. So what's the real difference of training an AI model to do exactly the same thing? And in my opinion, I feel like the AI model could do a lot better in terms of being a broker because it could be literally plugging into just about every single plan, every single wellness opportunity that's out there, and really designing the analytical side of it. So how would you come at that from a broker standpoint that runs off of human knowledge?
Okay, I'm ready to go deep.
All right, let's go.
Humans are driven off relationships, right?
Mhm.
And humans are relationship people. They crave relationship. That's how humans work, right? Um, a big part of relationships is empathy. it's understanding somebody else's position. It's sort of being able to feel some of their pain or some of their experience when good or bad things happen. Um, and I think that, to cut to the chase, AI doesn't have empathy. It can't. It has simulated empathy. It has, it's psychophantic, right? So it has this like shell of supportive words, but it doesn't have real empathy today. And I don't know that it ever will. I'm not going to say it won't, but it's hard to believe that it will. And so I think that piece of empathy is important because if we go back and we look at the whole benefits value chain, you've got at the end of that chain, you've got a person who has a medical problem with themselves that they've got to solve and treat. And so as you work backwards up that chain, there's an empathy thread that weaves its way all the way back through to the TPA to the PBM, right? Because you're dealing with people. So the let's look at the individual that has to get some emergency procedure or they have some chronic illness that they're dealing with that's really difficult for them and maybe probably makes it difficult for them to enjoy their family, to be in the moment with their kids. And they're worried about what's going to happen. Am I going to see my kids graduate? I've got this illness that I'm dealing with. That's a pretty big, heavy sort of thing. HR, the typical sort of decision maker in a business about the benefit plan, they feel that. They know it. Every single HR person I've talked to has, in just a short conversation, a very personal story of a teammate or themselves that dealt with something, right? And they want better care navigation. They want better support. Take that back to the broker. The HR is communicating that pain to the broker. The broker feels that. They say, man, we've got this group and there's two people with cancer and one has lymphomic disease and we've got a couple heart conditions and this is a sick, hurting group and they need a good solution, and so they feel that empathy and they feel that sense of wanting to have a good solution for those people in that group. Then they shop the plan or the benefit plan, if they're self-funded, to a TPA, and they're able to communicate like, here's the issues that are happening. We've got a 10-year-old with cancer and we just have to make sure the plan covers that, right? So you're like carrying this empathy thread all the way back up through the littlest pieces of the plan. And so AI can't do that, right? It's not going to carry that through. So if you let AI try to make those decisions, you're going to end up with a plan that makes sense to the metrics that are provided to it. And there's not a metric for empathy. There's not a way to say, we need at least a 6 on empathy, a 6 out of 10, sort of alignment with the emotional needs of this group. AI is not capable of really doing that.
Okay.
There's my long-winded answer.
No, that's a great answer, and I would empathize with you on that. And I would agree that AI may never get to that point. It will come close, but I don't think it'll ever truly get to the point where it can do it. And once we do, then I think Skynet's going to take over, and we're all going to be living on Mars with Elon, right? So I'm going to push back a little bit on that. You look at the 2008 mortgage crisis. You look at a lot of different events that happen that have a story or a narrative behind it. You brought up one where you have a child that has cancer, right? Do TPAs, underwriting carriers, all these guys, do they really take that into consideration, or is it just a numbers game for them?
So I think I think that's an interesting question and probably not easy to answer for all of them. I can tell you my experience with good brokers, TPAs, PBMs has been they do care. But I will say the thread of empathy, the thread of pain is very, very thick and strong at the patient level. It's a little bit weaker, a little bit thinner, the farther up the value chain you go. So by the time you get to, a TPA, PBM, stop loss, it's a distant empathy. They get it, they understand. It's a little bit stronger with the broker, right? Because they're closer to HR, sort of closer to the point of impact. And so the broker will carry that to the TPA. So the TPA, if the broker says, I need a plan that comprehends, this chronic issue that this child is having or whatever, and this comes to mind because we were just talking to a group yesterday that this was the case. They're going to push that onto the TPA. So the TPA, the business doesn't care, right? The business is about the numbers, but you're still talking to a person. And that person's going to say, well, this plan will support them well, and this plan won't. And it's going to get filtered. So the plan proposals and the things that are happening related to that plan, as they come back down the value chain to the HR, the decision maker on the plan, the filter gets stronger on the features of that plan. Hopefully that makes sense. The empathy filter is stronger the closer you get to the point of impact. And so I really do think it affects everything. And you're right. The TPA, the PBM, they're making money, especially if you're dealing with a BUCA. Like, they only care about the money. The business only cares about a shareholder value.
Yep.
But you're still dealing with people. It's still person-to-person conversation when you're shopping.
So let's come down the ladder here a little bit. I liked what you said. The empathy is stronger the closer you are to the impact, right? I love that. That's a great quote. We might have to pull that one out. You and your team meet with a large number of different businesses throughout the week, right? You discuss with them, you talk with them, you even rope in, HR, you rope in CFOs, you rope in even the broker into the conversation, because to your point, there's multiple touches, multiple human roles in the loop when it comes to benefits. So I'm curious, what is it like, and what kind of spread ratio would you say where you have owners that are very passionate about taking care of their employees and they show that empathy layer versus others that are just like, this is my budget, this is all I care about, and I don't care about we'll just, for lack of better terms, call it, I don't really care about my employees. I want to be able to check a box that I offer benefits because I'm either above 50 or it's kind of expected of me.
Yeah. Like, the employers, I think it's just a legal obligation, and they're not looking at it like taking care of their employees. They're looking at it like, I don't want to get fined, so I'm going to offer benefits. And I want it to cost me as little as possible. My experience, it's a low number of employers that only want to check the benefits box. Very low number. That's also a biased evaluation because the employers that don't care about their employees really aren't talking to us. So it's
That's a good point.
It's like the study they did of planes that in World War II that came back with damage, and they wanted to study where to put more armor. And so all these planes that came back, they were looking at the bullet holes, and they mapped them all out, and there's tons of bullet holes kind of in the wings and the tail, and they said, okay, we need to add armor there. Well, they brought, for whatever reason, an economist into this conversation and this analysis who said, guys, you're looking at the wrong data. You're looking at the planes that made it back. You got to look at the planes that didn't make it back. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what we're dealing with, from a Weltrio standpoint. We're looking, we only have the planes that are making it to us, the planes that are making it back, because if an employer doesn't care about their employee benefits, they're not going to start a conversation with Weltrio.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Kind of moving down along that vein as well. I mean, issues arise throughout the year, right? And it can be anything from a billing, what's the word? Like a misbilling code or something like that. It could be that you got double billed. It could be, like lack of access to healthcare, right? And so one of the tactics that a lot of brokers use is that the owner can pick up the phone and call a broker, and they will resolve the concern. And in my opinion, I think AI could do it a little bit more rapidly, a little bit more quickly when resolving those. Do you feel like that's a tactic that AI can't handle, and that is something that only brokers can handle, or is that just a sales tactic that they say when they're at the table?
That's an interesting question, because that's really a customer support or customer service function, and AI is getting better at that. And I think eventually AI will win in the customer service space, actually. And if we're talking about HR has a problem or question, or there's a billing issue or whatever with the plan, that's really a customer service function that broker is providing. And so I think as AI gets better, um, that will be something that AI could possibly take over. And the reason I think that is because the plan and the decisions are already made. So now AI only has to look at what exists to say, what's possible based on what exists. So there's no creativity there in a lot of cases, probably not every case, where the AI can just look at the data it has. What is the plan? What's the structure? Who gets paid? How much do they get paid? Where does the money go? Um, what drugs are covered? There's a 300 plus page document that comes along with every single benefit plan that has all the detail of the plan in it, specifically lists every single drug, every procedure. So it's very spelled out what the plan covers and what it doesn't cover and what the costs are. AI is fantastic at answering those kinds of questions. So I think once the interaction with AI customer service, gets better, I think that's probably a space that you could win this argument in. I think that I'd have to concede that point, I think.
Okay. I want to keep going down that vein, okay? Because here at Behind the Premium, I talk to tons of brokers throughout the week and get to know them. We have them on the roundtable discussions that we do. And so, again, I am definitely pro broker being involved, but I'm going to go down this rabbit hole, and let's see what you have to say about this one. Right now, I would say about 95% of brokers are still using a very manual process when it comes to, like I've mentioned earlier, researching, getting quotes, even managing particular things like we just talked about with customer support, right? So if brokers aren't adopting AI or even just technology in general, to do their job a little bit better, do you feel like this tells us something about whether AI can be a threat and take over their jobs, or is it just a tool that they're probably choosing to ignore at this point?
I have said it before, and I agree with a lot of the kind of the AI leaders out there right now that say AI is a tool, and you use it to do a job, but AI, it won't replace the job. It's a tool. And so, yes, there are cases where the tool or the task is the job, and those jobs will have to change, but AI is a tool. And I think brokers, I don't want to flip my position here, but brokers need to get on that ship. They need to get on that bus and find their seat on the AI bus for certain things. For support, is a great example, like we just talked about.
Mm-hmm. What other areas would you say that AI could really help broaden brokers' tool chest or toolbox, I should say, of helping them against other competitors, or even just making them stand out among the crowd?
Yeah, I'd first like to point out that I know what you're doing here.
You know me too well, my friend.
But then to answer the question, so I think AI will really excel, customer service. We talked about that. I think it's going to get there. It kind of sucks today, but I think it's going to get there. The other is, can analyze a large amount of data. And so when we start talking about these plans that have, 300 plus pages of detail of what's covered and what's not covered, the ability for AI to get through, dozens of those plans and compared to the demographics of the population that is coming in, the demographics of the group, AI is going to excel at that, and it's going to highlight, here's what's not covered the group needs, or here's based on similar groups analysis and patterns in the past, here's what this group will need that's covered or not covered, or what the costs are. And so kind of breaking down that analysis, I think AI will do great at that. Mm-hmm. I think it's, that's a tool. That's an analytical tool. Because if we look at what's the next step after that, the next step after that is deciding, okay, I've got 7 plans. I understand the gaps related to the population. Now what? how do I choose which plan? And I think when you start putting that into like into AI hands, um, I think that gets pretty risky because you're losing the empathy, you're losing the human connection of what does this individual employee need? What does the population of employees? What are they feeling and thinking? How does that translate back up through plan decision makers? And if you take that decision to AI, you're you're losing the prioritization of the people.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's interesting too, because if you look at the landscape of AI is nothing new. Just to be upfront, it's commercially new to a lot of people, just because of the commercial release of it, right? But AI, I've been using AI since 2010, right? And it is crazy how it's evolved over the years. And I would say just in the last 2 to 3 years, the amount of opportunity that it's created has dramatically like 100x. But in that same fashion too is this that you now have across not only the healthcare industry but just across just about every single industry, you have business owners that are, I would say, 50-50 on how they view and how they utilize AI. Like some business owners view that AI will replace jobs, which will pad their bottom line, allow them to look better with their investors and their shareholders. And then you've got the other ones that recognize it as a tool that they need to integrate to stay competitive. And I'm curious your thoughts on that. Like, where do you kind of see the healthcare industry right now from a wide, broad view of a lens, from service providers, insurance providers, third-party vendors, brokers, HR? Like, where do you kind of see that ratio sitting within the healthcare space?
As the ratio of how much AI is going to do.
Between the people that think AI will replace jobs
Oh,
versus AI as a tool that won't replace jobs, that'll enhance jobs.
A lot of HR folks and CFOs, which are kind of the main decision makers in a company about healthcare, are generally conservative and a little bit defensive. Not negatively defensive, but they want to keep the good things going, and they don't want to rock the boat too much with a plan that people are upset with, or a decision or a policy that doesn't go well. They don't want to make a lot of waves. Um, so, but it's not that they're not interested in progress. So they want to see the progress, and they're excited about the opportunity that AI brings. But they're also very concerned about, like, how does this affect our employee population? And so that sort of creates a little more conservative decisions. And I think that mindset and that approach to things, painting with a broad brush here, but I think that extends its way up to the broker, and then into the TPAs and the PBMs and things like that. I think I see underwriting uses a lot of AI. I see TPAs use a lot of AI. I see PBMs, and there's a whole pharmacy chain there of drug development and things like that that are using AI. But then as you get a little bit closer, I see brokers. They're using it a little bit. They're kind of dipping their toe in the water from what I see. HR people are kind of like the outside looking in a little bit to AI. They're kind of saying, okay, I'm not technical. I don't know if I really understand what it can do. I don't really know how to use it. I don't know how it's going to affect, my team or me or the decisions we're making. So it's hard to say a ratio, but I think it's a sort of a blend as you go back. And it is interesting because it sort of aligns with that empathy thread. The thinner it gets, the more AI and tech is being used, which is sort of an interesting correlation.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, like you kind of put it, I mean, I'll even add in the employee themselves, right? A lot of them are getting blood work, they're getting test results back, they're getting a lot of these things that, to be quite frank, they don't even know or understand, right? And all they get is a phone call from their doctor or the doctor's nurse that just says, hey, test came back negative, you're good to go. Okay. Or, hey, you might have elevated white blood cells, or, or this or that. Okay, what does that mean? And sometimes that causes a lot of anxiety, right? And so it's interesting because I've been talking to a lot of employees as well, and a lot of them are just using ChatGPT, Claude, and a lot of these things and pumping that test result data in to get it out, which raises the question of, HIPAA compliance, PI information, because the second that you put something into an AI model like ChatGPT, you are adding to the library of, especially if it's a commercial one that you're paying a few bucks for, and especially if it's free, right? You're being thrown into that training model. And so your data is just being thrown out there. Like, what do you think about the whole AI HIPAA PI kind of fiasco we're kind of getting towards right now, the train wreck, I should say?
Yeah, and it's wild. I don't think people realize what is happening to their data. And I don't think people realize downstream what's going to occur. And I think there's two sort of angles to look at this. One is, as an individual, I own my healthcare data. So if I want to give it to you, I want to tell you what's going on, I want to tell you what drugs I'm using, whatever the things are, I can do that. That's my choice. I own the data. It's my data. If I want to give it, I could post it on Facebook. I could give it to, AI. That's my choice.
Yeah.
I think what people don't know, and I think what generally we as a population society don't know, is when I plug my test results into, an AI model, what's going to happen with that? What's going to happen in a few years when it knows all these things about me? You could take a dark turn into like a dystopian sort of society of like, now AI knows all your little health issues, right? And now if AI decides you're a risk to humanity, what's going to happen is your AI credit card now not going to work at grocery stores to buy food because AI is trying to funnel you out. I don't know. That's a little dark, but
no, that's where I was going. I
mean,
was like thinking Skynet's going to take out the weakest or the healthiest people first and foremost,
Sure,
so that they can control the weak ones.
But maybe let's flip that. Let's say Skynet gives advantage to healthy people. Let's say you've never put your healthcare data into AI, and Skynet says, "Oh, you must be, you're a little healthier. Let's get you more opportunities. Let's, in this weird dystopian society we're imagining, they become the rulers or whatever. I mean, they're the guys living on the hill and not in the sewer. I don't know. I mean, that's a little sci-fi-ish, but
we're headed there.
But the point is, we don't know what they're doing with our data.
Yep.
And yes, I'm free to give it, but what are the implications going to be? I think people need to be educated is kind of the bottom line. And so that's really my answer. I think education is the key. And it's not so much healthcare education, it's some of that, but it's also how to use AI, how to use technology in general. Where is it safe to put your data? How do you keep that to yourself? I think a good sort of rule of thumb is if you're okay with the world knowing, then put it in AI. Just assume that everyone's going to know it if you put it into a technology like that.
Yeah. No, and I think that's good to know. And I think a lot of us do have that kind of understanding, especially us older generation. It's hard to think of us as getting into the older generation, right?
We're still in our 20s. It's okay.
I know.
We're not the older ones.
As you can tell. But you look at these younger generations, like I look at my 8-year-old. Oh gosh, he's 9 now. Sorry. 9-year-old. And he uses ChatGPT for tons of stuff. Like we just went on a trip and he was saying, hey, create me a list of things I can do inside the car based upon my interests. That's all he put. And it knew so much about him. And it started, whoa, that was weird. My light went out. Anyways, but to my point is like it's already starting to understand who you are and that kind of stuff. And the reason why I brought this up was to kind of see this next question for you is if you've got some of those, we'll just call them ultra aggressive AI business owners that want AI to replace employees so that they can make more profit type deal. What's to stop them from using AI to evaluate the plan, evaluate if their broker's actually doing them justice and not just collecting a paycheck off of them, and they're really starting to use AI to validate or fact check what a broker is saying to them?
Yeah, so I think using AI as a second opinion is awesome. I think that's great. Go ahead and do that. I wouldn't use AI as the first opinion. So totally great to get a second opinion. I mean, brokers, especially when you're starting out before you're comfortable, they're often asking other brokers. They're talking about what's going on, talking about a plan they got back. They're shopping TPAs, they're getting input on things. And they're doing all this really as a second opinion and to learn, right? And so I think if you're using AI like more like a coworker, second opinion, I think that's great. But I think you've got to understand its limitations, right? And a big limitation is that it doesn't, uh, it kind of goes back to the empathy. It doesn't understand thoughts and feelings. And on paper, by the numbers, it could get you the best plan, right, or the best solution. But I think we all kind of know, and this hurts my heart a little bit as an engineer to say this, but it's not all about the numbers all the time, right? It's about the people and the people problems you're trying to solve, which I think are a difficult thing for AI to understand and solve. Maybe we'll get there, and maybe I'm just the old guy, but AI doesn't have a soul, it doesn't have a heart, and so I sort of look at it like, how can it have empathy? It could have manufactured, simulated empathy because it's programmed that way. But that's my thought on my long-winded thought.
No, and I think that's right. It tees it up for the next question that I had here. Benefits decisions affect every employee, including their family, right? And I think a lot of times when brokers work with companies, they work with depending on the size, right? They work with like one specific HR team member, and that team member is responsible for the whole company, right? Choosing which plans are good. And I think it's hard sometimes, especially at those bigger levels, to understand not only the employees, but the employees' families as well. Because, to your point, kid with cancer, unless HR is aware of these kind of things, they're going to typically choose plans that work best for them and what direction they get from the C-level, right? Because let's be honest, like a lot of times C-level's just all about them and what works for them. And they say, hey, if it's good enough for me, it's good enough for my employees, right? Would you say that's a fair assessment there before I go on? But
no, not in all cases. Sometimes, yeah. But I do think the friction between HR and C-level is actually really good in a benefit plan conversation, because C-level, yeah, they're worried about them, but they're very worried about the bottom line. The HR person is very worried about the human issues. And if they have health issues, then that's top of mind. But they're worried about the team and the health issues naturally, right, as a result of their role and their responsibilities. And I think that friction is really, really good in an organization, because you want the best solution for your employees, but you also got to keep the company running. So you need the balance of finance. So I don't know that I would necessarily agree that that most executives are only worried about basically their issue. That being said, we can go back to this World War II plane damage example and say we only see kind of we're only talking to really the good HR and executive teams, because they care about their people and they also care about reducing costs, and that's who we talk to mostly.
Right. Right. And I mean, at the end of the day, depending on if they're a privately held company versus a public,
There's a lot of dynamics. Yeah.
there's a lot of dynamics that go into it. So I'll digress a little bit and I'll agree with you halfway on that. I still think that at the end of the day, numbers do end up impacting the outcome, regardless of want and desire, I should say, or empathy towards things. Because I would love to be able to give my employees the world, but at the end of the day, I got to keep the lights on and I got to keep paychecks being paid, right? And so sometimes that requires a little nip and tuck here and there, so to say. My question is, one thing that a lot of businesses are starting to move towards, and some of the things that I've seen, is a lot of AI being introduced through third-party vendor, things such as apps, telehealth, support, like you brought up earlier. But I think you kind of tippy-toed around this, and you talked a little bit about like AI being trusted, AI data being put into the AI system, like what kind of things there. But I mean, really, at the end of the day, I don't know about you, and I can share a story here in just a second, but when it comes to chatting with an AI, I'm curious if you think that, because you said it just a few minutes ago, that AI will eventually reign supreme when it comes to support. So I think we might flip roles here for a second. Do you honestly think that people will want to engage with AI over a human?
Okay. Short answer, no. People will never want to, I believe, talk to an AI instead of a human in most cases. However, I think AI is going to get to a point where people won't know they're talking to AI. So I think that's the key difference. When AI gets to that point, and I've seen some absolutely incredible AI tool. I mean, in the last 3-4 months, I think we've all seen AI created videos of humans doing things, and celebrities or whatever. And some of those get pretty difficult to actually tell if it's AI or if it's real. I've seen. I was with one company and we developed a sales agent, an AI sales agent. We had one person in our company who recorded hundreds of hours of her talking, talking about the business and the product and going through procedures and solutions to customer problems. She just talked through all this stuff. All of her conversations were training data for a virtual AI sales agent, sales and support agent. And you could not tell the difference. I knew it was AI, and I couldn't find an indicator that it was AI. It looked just like this woman, talked like her, mannerisms, had the right answers. The limitation you run into is like context and training data, because it just doesn't know everything. So you kind of hit that wall. That wall is a solvable problem. And it's just more processing and more data, more capacity. And so, yeah, I think AI is going to take over customer support, customer service, only because it's going to get so good people won't be able to tell the difference. I think right now you get super frustrated with an AI support bot. I don't think that's going to be the case for too much longer.
So that brings up a good question here for you. We're talking about whether AI should replace brokers or not, right? And for me, this is probably a bad example, but I was trying to do a software, like sign up for a software, free 14-day trial. I ended up getting automatically switched to a different plan. The 14-day trial went away and I immediately got billed. And I was just trying to test out the software. And so for me, I was really upset. And because it was a technical error or whatever you want to call it, whatever support told me it was. But at the end of the day, like it was a good chunk of money, right? I mean, something I could have easily waited on, but the anxiety around it was so high that every time I tried to contact a human and ask for a human representative, it just would create a ticket and tell me that somebody would get back to me in 48 business hours. And I'm like thinking, oh my gosh, like this just got my blood boiling more and more. And then I started a new chat and started a new chat and started a new chat. And I think I ended up getting like 3 or 4 support tickets out of this thing. And, bless the people at the support, they ended up coming through for me, but it took like 12 hours, right?
Yeah.
And I think that we like the idea of AI being available 24/7. But to your point, it doesn't show empathy. It doesn't show a lot of these different, things to kind of relate with me. Yeah, I can say, "Oh, my bad. I'm sorry," or "Hey, I can see how you're frustrated." And those kind of verbiage, that kind of language, just pardon my French. I don't know if I can say this, but it pisses me off on every single level, and it gets me to the point where I didn't even want to use the software platform anymore, right? And so when you've got an employee and you're the HR team or you're the owner because of how big your company is, and there's something immediately going on, you want to talk to a human right away. And so, for me, I guess I'm kind of flipping the narrative on my what I'm pro for, but I feel like that is not the right solution for that type of thing. I feel like AI can replace other things, but in that setting, I don't know if a business owner would feel comfortable or even make that switch just because of that example.
Yeah, and that kind of goes hand in hand with what I'm talking about, I think. But let me ask you a question. Why were you frustrated? Like the one word or half sentence answer. Why were you frustrated?
Because I wanted resolution immediately.
Sure. So you hit the limits of what the AI knew,
Hmm.
right? So it couldn't help you because it didn't
Or the
have.
capability of what it could do.
Yeah, yeah. So it didn't have access to either data or tools to be able to fix your problem, to even before that, to even probably understand your problem,
Hmm.
right? It didn't have the context. So um, that's where I think uh, that's where I think the change is going to happen, is that AI model gets smarter and bigger and understands more and has the patterns for how to solve your problem. There's most customer service problems are not unique, right? I mean, if you're early in your business, sure, there's new ones, but people struggle with the same things. It becomes patterns, and eventually you can fix the product or fix documentation or whatever it is. But most things are patterns. So your problem is probably not the first time anyone's had this problem with the software, right? Um, but AI doesn't know how to handle it because there's no pattern it can look at to study what solves that problem. And I think that's going to change over time. I think, in an ideal system, the first few times somebody had that specific problem that you had, the AI would say, okay, I've seen this a couple of times. They would highlight, hey, we need a procedure or something, and this kind of goes back to the human. The human's got to now create the resources for the AI tool. So if you had talked to AI, told it your problem, and it was able to say, oh, you know, thanks for letting me know, Cody. I've seen this before. Here's what we need to do. You never would have wanted to talk to a human.
Yeah.
And my opinion is that that's sort of a small step from where you were at to where you would be satisfied, right? Because if
Yeah.
it just knew, I've seen this before, here's what you do, you know,
Yeah.
or even escalated right away. I've seen this before. It's not in my capability to solve it. Here's a ticket, rather than like stringing you along and the fake empathy. I mean, that's really the infuriating part, right? And that's
Yeah.
actually what I thought you were going to say when I asked what made you so upset. It's the fake. Uh, what's the word? It's the fake sense of like, I'm in this with you. I
I,
get it.
Yeah, I can go through and I can put up with that kind of crap because I
Oh,
mean I've worked with AI for a long time. Like I've kind of just numbed myself to those kind of responses.
it's funny for me. That bugs me. I'm like, you're not a human. Don't talk like it. You're a machine. Don't
Yeah,
tell me you get it and great idea or whatever. You don't. You're a machine. You're a tool.
yeah. See, and for me, I've always been a very futuristic kind of person. So I love AI. I think it's a very useful tool. And for me, the frustration came is that it wasn't a tool for me to get that quote unquote refund, get my account fixed. I was looking at it through that lens. But you bring up a good point of like most people will be like, I'm sitting here bleeding. I don't know what to do. My AI avatar telehealth doctor is not doing anything for me. And they're wigging out and they're just telling me to go to Instacare or the emergency room, right? And I think that that brings up another point. Like, I read a study in preparation for this conversation about what the health industry, the percentage of health industry experts that feel AI is definitely needed in the health industry. And it was a large number. I think it was like 77% or something like that, feel like they need to adopt AI into it. And for me, working with AI for so many years I feel like it's going to cause more problems than it is going to solve problems. Because, I mean, you could probably attest to this as well, is since implementing AI into probably your workflow of things, I know in my workflow of things, it's actually made me more busy than it has to relieve a lot of the different tasks or items that I had to, processes that I had to do throughout the day. And now it's given me more things that I can jump out and do, which is good. But on the flip side is I seem like I'm more crazy when it comes to my schedule. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's probably a whole other conversation, but I would agree with that. And we'll leave it there. We can talk about that some other time, but 100% agree. You get more busy, you get spread across more things because, I look at it this way, okay, we'll get into it now. It doesn't mean another conversation. I can't even help it. So I look at your capability is like the surface area of a pond, the water on top of a pond. And there's certain things across that surface that go deep. You're really, really good at the things in the center of that pond. Everybody's got their superpower. Maybe they have one or two, maybe three, I don't know. There's some things that go really deep that they're really good at. And then, you get closer to the edges and it's not as deep. It's they're outside of their comfort zone maybe, but they can do it, but it's not the thing they're good at or they want to be doing.
Right.
I think AI basically spreads out the banks of that pond. It doesn't really change the amount of water in the pond, right? So it'll get shallower. The more you use it, the shallower the pond gets, but the broader it gets. And so now you've got this huge surface area of things you can do because AI is right underneath the water making it happen, right? You ask a question, give it a task, give it a command, whatever, and it's working underneath the water. But you're losing depth. You're losing personal knowledge of how to complete the task or what quality looks like or, those kinds of things, the minutia of the thing you're accomplishing. But that surface area, the water gets wider, but it doesn't change the amount of water. So you're still working 8-10 hours a day or 16 hours a day or whatever you do. And you're working across this huge surface area, but you don't need to go as deep under the water for all the things you're doing. That's my mental model of like how humans and AI and kind of that what that relationship sort of looks like.
That makes sense. And I could see AI being implemented, especially in the healthcare side of things, at the carrier, TPA, PPM levels. But that raises the question is that if AI is growing with those to analyze claim data, analyze trends, patterns, things like that, should brokers be implementing AI into their workflows currently?
Yes, as a tool. I don't think it would be right or good for AI to replace brokers. But I do think brokers should be using AI to compare plans, to input the data and the information from their group and from what are HR's priorities and use AI as a tool to help them compare and contrast as that second opinion we were talking about. But I think if right now and for the foreseeable future, if you were to replace a broker with AI, think you're just asking for problems. I think you're going to optimize at an AI designer level of priority and not the individual business and the individual groups level of priority. And I think that's a key difference.
That makes sense. And I mean, you've already got a lot of vendors that are already starting to move towards that. They've been a human first, but then they're moving towards an AI level where they can have less humans and be able to manage the same amount. Do you feel like that's the right move for a lot of these brokerages or even vendors to move towards adopting AI?
I'm gonna shameless plug Welltrio right here, because I think brokers should do the same thing Welltrio is doing, in that we keep the human relationship alive. The human relationship, the human connection, the human touch point is the most critical thing. You know, I have a business partner who is 100% about relationships. He's just that relationships are everything in business and in life, and you have to keep that relationship with the human. Past that layer of contact and interaction, 100% implement as much AI as you can to make that relationship better. So AI is a tool to support the quality of the relationship. AI is not the relationship, right? And I think that that strategy should be applied to probably every business, every job, but brokers especially. Let the broker needs to have that relationship because of that empathy thread. HR is not going to want to work with an AI broker if they don't feel like that broker cares about their situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that broker, they've got a job to do, and there's a lot of tasks and analysis and things that happen behind the scenes that AI would be really good at, but it can't replace that relationship, and that empathy thread breaks when you put AI in the middle of it.
Yeah, and I think that I think you nailed it there because I agree. I think human connection, we all as humans are, it's built into our DNA to connect with other humans, and to have that relationship. It's just, I feel like AI is definitely going to move the needle when it comes to evaluating things. So the tool aspect that you keep bringing up, I think that's where it's really at. And I think that that's the way that we need to look at it as. Um, I'm kind of curious, when it boils down to AI being implemented into TPA carriers, PPMs, things like that, do you think that AI will increase the amount of maximizing benefit plans? Do you feel like it will maximize cost? Do you feel like, by what I mean by cost is adding more things in that shouldn't be there because it's trying to hit a status quo set by maybe the carrier? Or do you think that it will actually end up fixing a lot of the gaps that are in the healthcare system?
Man, that is a tough question to answer because I think it's very, very broad. I'll take the I'll answer it from the perspective of, let's say, an evil large carrier, right? So from that perspective, it's easy to believe that they would take their AI model and and basically give it the priority of, we want to make 20% margin, and we want to sell the plan. So what's the balance of getting people to accept the plan and make our 20% margin? They want to make as much money as they can. So the higher the plan, the better their 20%. How do you get that optimized cost, the optimized highest premium? You know, what's what's just not enough pain for the group to leave? And I think it's easy for people to believe and easy to see that that could be a goal of like a large carrier AI model, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's present plans that optimize their profit, and they're just not quite bad enough to leave. Uh, and so that's where I think the problem will be. That's where I think it depends on who is modeling the AI, who's training it, who's giving it priorities. That's going to be the big question. At the same time, I could see a conscientious carrier, somebody on the the good side of things, saying, all right, well, let's figure out what's going on in the group, in the population. What is the highest quality specific for that group and the lowest cost plan that we can present? And of course, that's going to be the marketing pitch for everyone, but who's really doing it, right? Who's actually implementing that sort of a strategy? And the difficult thing is you don't know. You can't know unless you built the AI.
Exactly. And I was just going to say that, like, who owns this AI that you're leveraging, right? Is it the carrier? Because in my opinion, if it's the carrier, they're going to still keep that percentage that they were paying the broker in commission, because you don't have to pay AI, right?
Yeah.
They're going to keep that.
Yep.
They're absolutely going to keep it, right? And so then it boils down to, well, does the brokerage create the AI for it? And if they do, then it goes into the HIPAA, like what platform are they using, all that kind of stuff.
I want to speak to the economics of it, because I think that's where you follow the money to figure out what's going on. And the scenario you just outlined, where the carrier says, hey, HR people, skip the broker, they'll market as save some money, skip the broker, just, upload your stuff here and we'll do an analysis, and you'll get your plan recommendations, and maybe you'll have a third party that shops it, right? But it's an AI broker, which is kind of our whole conversation here. AI, and again, go back to the economics. AI is extremely expensive to operate. Who's got the money to build, a comprehensive enough AI model that's delivering, at least a quality enough plan to these HR people, to these groups?
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be BUCA. It's going to be the big, multi-billion-dollar players in the industry. They're the ones who are going to kind of own this AI underwriting, AI brokerage, AI plan design space, because they've got the money. And that just is a fox guarding the henhouse situation. And the problem is it's going to be marketed, and it's going to be sold as third party, and it's going to be sold as shopped. But I think in the next year, 2 years, we're really going to have to pay attention to the money. Who's an investor in those companies? Who owns those companies? Where does the money flow from? And I see it being a big problem. I don't see the system getting better. I see margins getting better for the players who have the money already to build the systems that automate more of these steps.
And I mean, if you really look at it too, from an individual marketplace point of view, it's kind of similar to that, where I don't need a broker. I can just go to the marketplace and I can select my plan I want, and I'm good to go, right? But then it goes back to the problem of, I don't even know, because there's no AI there to help me pick a plan that's good for me and my family. I've got to educate myself to a certain extent of deductibles, what in-network versus out-of-network is, what a copay is, and for a lot of these younger generation, I feel like that's where a lot of people are just, screw it, I'm healthy, I don't need it, I don't need insurance, so I'm just going to forego it, right?
Yeah, or pick the lowest cost plan.
Or you know what, let's be honest, like a lot of them are still on mommy and daddy's
till they're 26.
Yep, exactly. And so I think there's not only AI can help with education. I think that's another big thing that we didn't really talk about or get into, is how AI can help educate. I think AI can help develop those, to your point of like what Trio does, by helping change employees' behaviors to make smarter decisions when it comes to not only their health in general, but when it comes to their healthcare decisions as well. I think that's another conversation we can have down the road. But before I sign out and ask my last question, did you have anything that you wanted to add to this? Because I know it's a fun topic that you and I have quite a bit.
There's so many little rabbit trails that we could go down. I mean, there's a lot of thoughts I have on this whole topic, but nothing sort of surfaces to the top, because everything is an hour-long conversation. So
exactly.
No, I mean, this has been great.
Perfect. So my last question to you is, I know we took sides. I was pro AI, you were pro broker. but let's be honest, both of us are definitely pro AI and pro broker. But just kind of as a call out on this, what do you honestly feel that in the next 3 to 5 years, what the landscape will really look like?
I think the landscape is gonna lean much more into AI. I think businesses need to be careful about who's funding the AI, where it's coming from. They need to look at what the priorities are of the people paying for the AI. But I think AI is gonna largely replace brokers. I think the shift is gonna happen where HR people will still want an advisor to help them select a plan. They're going to go to an automated marketplace. They're going to shop their plan themselves, and they're going to get several plans back, and they're going to say, "I'm not an expert. We could decide just on straight cost. We could decide on the drugs that are covered. I don't know how to make this decision necessarily." And they're going to want an advisor to help understand the plans, kind of that empathy piece of like understanding the situation the business is in and the people. And they're going to want that support so they don't feel like they're on an island making this decision by themselves. That's where I see maybe the future of this in a few years sort of heading into.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, thanks, Jacob. I always love these deep rabbit hole kind of conversations. You and I get to go down every once in a while.
Me too.
So definitely thanks to everybody that's tuning in live as well as the recording. If you happen to have thoughts on this, definitely drop them in the comments below. We want to hear from you. We do monitor it very regularly, so we'd love to hear from you. Likewise, also make sure that you like and subscribe. It helps us with the algorithms. And definitely tune in every Friday at 10:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. I guess it's Mountain Time, right? Or 12:30 Eastern Standard Time. And if you've got a topic that you would like us to cover in Benefits 3.0, we'd love to hear from you as well. We've got a plethora, a library of topic titles we want to tackle, and so. But we would love to hear more about what you guys want to hear about. But until then, thanks everybody, and keep pushing the status quo of healthcare. It's only when you join the voice and lead the discussion is when we're going to see absolute change. So with that being said, thanks everybody. Have a good one, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.